Good day, everyone. Welcome back to English 3.1. All right, so let's go back to where we left off the last time. So start sharing the screen. Okay, here we go. So the last thing that we talked about was how to outline your writing. Okay, so what's the outline? So basically, outlining is planning the structures of your essay. Okay, now we also use the example that regards the banning of cigarette advertising to reduce the level of young smokers. Okay, so we have been using these examples since chapter 1, where we learn about how to generate ideas. Okay, and we use these examples again when we talk about how to outline. Okay, so that you guys see how everything unfolds. Okay, that's why I stick to only one example instead of using different examples. Okay, every time we move on to some new topic, you guys see new examples, it's going to be hard to relate. Okay, compared to using the same example throughout the entire procedures, okay, from brainstorming to outlining and also to writing, okay? But we're not going to do any actual writing just yet, okay? We're still touching the basics or the fundamentals of writing. Okay, so the last time you guys saw this outline. So this is an example of an outline. So it's not yet a complete essay. It may contain some sentences, okay, but all the sentences are not joined properly, okay? And, not everything is written in sentence. For example, when you look at the body section, major support, factors that contribute to nicotine addiction, that's not even a sentence by itself, okay? But it gives you an idea how your essay is going to proceed, okay? So if you look at this outlining here, okay, you know exactly that in the introduction, you're going to start by having this main idea, teenage nicotine addiction, stem from several other factors, and this problem requires collaborative effort from schools, teachers, parents, and authorities. So that's the main idea, okay? But you can also add some background information to this. I mean, you don't have to start your introduction by saying teenage nicotine addiction stem from blah, 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 okay? You can give your readers some what you call digression, okay? So you can talk about, hey, today we have been, having a problem with young teenage nicotine addiction, and this problem is quite. I'm sorry, I have to. ฮัลโหลตอนนี้สอนแล้วครับครับ Okay, so you can start by talking about how important or how serious this problem of teenage nicotine addiction is, and then you can move on to talking about and right now there's ongoing debate about what can be done to reduce the rate of nicotine addiction. While some people believe this, I believe that nicotine addiction stems from so many factors, and it's going to require effort, collaborative effort from school, teachers, parents, and authorities. Okay, so that's how it's going to look like when you're actually writing an introduction. Okay, and for this major support, that goes into your body paragraph. Okay, so if you how many body paragraphs you need, that depends on the number of major supporting idea that you have. So the first major supporting idea says factors that contribute to nicotine addiction. So it sort of draw a boundary or a scope on which this paragraph is going to focus. Okay, so this paragraph will focus only on factors that contribute to nicotine addiction. Okay, and the minor support are going to be in line with major support. So they're going to be elaborating on major support. Okay, so look, if you look at the first minor support, it says peer pressure. So what is peer pressure relative to major support? It is one of the factors that contribute to nicotine addiction. Okay, and then support here. Okay, this simply reminds you of, about how you're going to explain peer pressure as being a contributing factor. Okay, now the greater the depth, the greater the support, the less the time you have to pause to think while you are writing. Imagine that when you are writing an essays, right? I mean, I'm quite certain that many of you have experienced this moment when you have to like stop for a good 2-3 minutes to think about what to write next. Okay, now that happens because you didn't plan beforehand. Okay, now if you plan beforehand, if you have enough support, okay, this is going to save you a great deal of time down the road when you are writing. Okay, so the greater the depth, okay, the less often you have to pause to think, right? So, for example, here it says peer pressure gives young people desire to smoke. So that simply means that when you start talking about peer pressure, you can use it as an explanation. You can add more words. You can add connecting device, like transitional words. Yep. Okay, so those are the things that you can do when you're actually writing. Okay, right. All right, the next major support would be about better solution. Okay, so this set itself apart from the contributing factors. So the contributing factors are about reasons why young people become addicted to nicotine. Okay, and there are about 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 4 main reasons. Okay, three main reasons, sorry. One is peer pressure, the other is misconception, and the last one is lack of regulation. Okay, now, the next major supports means you start a new paragraph, okay? And you're going to write a topic sentence that contain this keyword, better solution. So you can, you can do it by writing some things like, to address this problem once and for all right, we need the following solutions. Yep. Okay. And the first solution is collaboration from school teachers and parents. Okay. So that's the minor support that will explain or elaborate upon the major support, because when people read your topic sentence, they're going to wonder, okay, what those better solutions. Okay, so minor support is going to reveal the first solution, okay, plus some explanation. All right, so basically this is outlining. It's going to look like a bunch of bullet points, okay, but yep, that's a good practice, and I recommend that you guys do outlining, okay, before you do your assignments or before you do an exam. Okay, right. Okay, so there are different kinds of outline. Okay, and as you saw earlier, that was a formal outline. So a formal outline is the kind of outlining that contain depth of information. Okay, so basically, you just spend more time thinking about how you will explain your points, not just what are the points that you want to include in your assignment. Okay, so if you just have a quick look at this example here, right? It says, evaluate, let's have a look at the assignments, okay? Let me just highlight it for you so you know what sentence I am reading. Wait a second, this marker is not working. Why is it not working? Okay. Okay, evaluate the proposal to replace the current ban on street food vendors in Bangkok. Should we lift the ban? Why or why not? Okay, so this is pretty much like an assignment questions or exam questions that you will see in your future as a student. Okay, so suppose you have brainstorm for this, you have got some ideas, and you are ready to create an outline, okay? But let's say your time is quite limited, okay? So you don't get to go into very details about how you're going to explain your point. So this is going to be the kind of outline that might be suitable for you in the time situation. So let's look at the introduction here. It says, introduction, you will contain visit that says, lifting the ban will not only benefit the owners of street food vendors, but also employees in many office buildings. Okay, so that sentence serves the purpose of the main idea. Okay, so it tells your reader that this is where you stand on this issue. This is your main claim, and you will prove to them why they should accept this claim of yours or these opinions of yours. Right. Okay, now the next number in the bullet point says problems with the street food. Okay, so that means you, in order to start explaining to your readers, okay, you will talk about problems with street food vendors. Okay, but you will notice that there aren't any examples of problems with street food vendors. Okay, those examples are not revealed here. Okay, maybe the writer will, make a decision while he is writing. Okay, so for this kind of informal outline, you might have to like pause to think how street food vendors work. Okay, now you notice something here. This is statement, okay, made a claim that by lifting the ban, which means to stop penalizing people from selling food on the street, right? Will not only benefit the owners, but also employees, okay? This introduction or this business statement raise questions about benefits, okay? Not just for owners, but also for employees. Okay, so the reader will want to know the benefits. Okay, it's okay. You don't always have to start by talking about your idea controlling word or benefits. In this case, you don't have to start talking about. You can talk about something else as long as you remember to talk about benefits at some point in your midsection or in your body paragraph. Okay, but when you outline, it will indicate whether the idea development is logical or not. Now, if you look at this example here, problem with street food vendor and how street food works. Now, what do you think should be discussed first, right? How street food vendor works or problems with street food vendors, right? I think how street food vendors work should come before the problems, because we will not be able to, understand the problems until you know what is street food vendors, right? Okay, so but another advantage of outlining here, people, is that it allows you to see whether your idea development makes sense, and will allow you to fix that before it's already too late. Because when you start writing and when you realize that, hey, I should be talking about this first, it's already too late. You have written so many words, you won't have time to erase them all and rewrite it all over again. Okay, so outlining helps you to also see your idea developments. Okay, whether the ideas are in the right order or not, in the logical order or not. Okay, so the way I see it, this writer should start with explaining about how street food vendors work before talking about problems with street food vendors. Okay, but then you can now talk about benefits of street food vendors, which is very crucial because that is directly related to the claim that he made in the introduction, okay? And he will have to remember to talk about the benefit for the owners and for the employees because those are related to the claim, okay? And then a conclusion, okay? So that is an example of an informal outline. Now, same questions, all right? But we're going to look at different outlining, okay? So it says here that a formal outline is much more detailed and it includes specific supporting details and several levels of support. And here's a part of a formal outline for the same assignment. Okay, so we're still looking at the problem, the questions that ask us to evaluate the proposal to replace the current ban on street food vendors in Bangkok. Should we lift the ban? Why or why not? Right? Same. But this time, based on the same thesis statement, if you look at the body section, okay, it's sort of more clear. All right, there's more depth to everything. First, describe the problem with street food vendors. Okay, so that's like the major supporting idea. Okay, this is equivalent to just saying problems with street food vendors. We look at the informal outline, it's just one word, right? Problems with street food vendors. But here, this outline sort of gives himself an instruction that, hey, the first body paragraph, you have to describe problem with street food vendors, okay? All right, and it breaks down problems into 3 different problems. Dirty, okay? And each problem will have explanation that is regard to the stated items here. So for example, dirty. All right, so he's probably talking about dirty pavement. Okay, this is caused by what? Littering and food scraps. So yeah, so when he explained, he's going to include these 2 details in the explanation. Unfair, okay? Unfair, this is probably about this street food vendors are acting in a manner that's probably unfair to other people who run a legal shop. Like it says here, the owners do not, I think what he's trying to say here is do not pay taxes to street food vendors because they don't have to register the business. All right, and there's no way of knowing their income, so they're not paying taxes, so they're living tax-free, right? Their stands block the entrance of the legal shops. Okay, so imagine in Thailand, it's quite common that you will have a legal business and they will have like a storefront, okay? But then on the pavement, you will see, mobile street food vendors park right outside, okay? And they will have all the structures like a chair or that umbrellas that will block the entrance, okay, to legal shops. So that is a little unfair because they don't have their own place to sell the stuff and they are not paying taxes either. All right, so that's the problem. Next is the accident. Okay, so what is this about? So it says here, car pull over. So car pull over means, because street food vendors, they are selling their things on the pavement, right? And people, when they want to, like if you spot your favorite street foods 200 meters ahead of you, what you're going to do is you're going to try to take the leftmost lane. So if you coming from the high speed lane or the rightmost track, you will quickly cut in front of other drivers just to get to the side of the road to pull your car over, which means to stop to buy your food, okay? And that could cause accidents, right? Because cars approaching you from behind, when you cut right in front of them, they will have to, immediately tap on the brake and accidents could happen. All right, next, the structure could injure pedestrians. Yes, so just imagine you go and buy stuff from street food vendors and umbrellas. I actually experienced this myself. Stumble upon this umbrella stand. Okay, and I'm also a tall person, so sometimes there's a tip from this umbrella that gets quite sharp, and that could crash somebody in the face. Yep, so it's dangerous. Next, how street food vendors work. So in this paragraph, he's going to be talking about what street food vendor really is, how it works. It's a kind of business where the owners have a fixed mobile stand to operate. Okay, so you can have a fixed place, or you can move around. Anyone can stop to buy what they want. But like I said earlier, I think this should swap, right? How street food works should take the first paragraph and problems should follow. Yeah. Okay, benefits, right? So you will see here that he breaks it down into two main benefits. Okay, benefits for the owners, and now we can see some of the details. All right, previously we didn't see what those benefits are, but now we see that, okay, benefit for the owner is a small investment, bigger profits. Yes, okay, obviously, because when you run street food vendors, you don't have to bear so much cost for utility, right? Some street food vendors, they don't use electricity at all, right? Or maybe they just use a mobile generator or just battery, right? There's so many street food vendors where they only need just the light, and the light can be powered by the lead acid battery. All right. Okay, so not so much operating cost. Okay, and so they can have higher profit margins. Office building employees. So the benefits for office and office building employees are that they have access to cheap goods. Okay, and it's also convenient for them to go buy food, right? Because all they have to do is walk out the buildings, and their favorite snacks or the favorite lunch will be right in front of them. Okay, so that's an outline. Okay, all right, next we're going to talk about organizational strategies. So what exactly is organizational strategies? Okay, so organizational strategy is all about how you're going to organize your content, okay, so that it captures your reader's attention, okay, and it's also give them the right amount of information each time they proceed from one step to another. Okay, you can think of this as going to an expensive restaurant where they serve you different courses in one meal. Okay, so the chef must have planned beforehand what they think you should have first, what you should have next, what you should have at the end. Okay, and they do this in this order in order to maximize your satisfaction. Okay, they believe that by eating this first and then this and then that, it will maximize your satisfaction. Okay, so writer can do something similar. Okay, they can decide on, okay, what sort of information should be delivered to you first. Okay, so that you become clear about these this whole subject area. Okay, and then they will decide on what to deliver to you next. Okay, right. So this kind of thing is actually everywhere in real life. Even when you go to a shopping mall, imagine when you go to a shopping mall, like compared to like a cheap, convenience store. with upper class supermarket, right? If you go to a cheap convenience store, everything is organized in the way that it's quite confusing, right? Even though the store is quite small, but finding your item could be a challenge, okay, compared to upper class supermarket where everything is clearly level, right? You know exactly which aisles to obtain your item because it's clearly labeled, right? And you also can ask the staff members to give you direction. Okay, so yeah, that's basically organizational strategies. Okay, so this part here will is aimed to maximize their satisfaction. Is is a technique, okay, to decide on what information to deliver to them first, what should come after. Okay, right. There are actually quite a few organizational strategies. I'm just going to go through each one of them briefly, okay, just to give you an idea. Okay, so first we have chronological or sequential. Okay, so chronological means by time or based on time. Okay, sequential means, you know, one after the other. So what happened first should be talked about first. What happened next should be talked about next. Okay. So this kind of organizational strategy is suitable for describing a chart where there's a change in quantity over the change in time. Okay. So let's have a quick look at an example where you can use chronological organizational strategy. Right, let's just pause my video for 1 second. Okay, let me just share to you my screen once again. Here we go. Okay, so suppose you have to describe this chart. What would you do? Okay, so this chart is about the average carbon dioxide emissions per person in 1967 to 2007. Okay, so basically, this is talking about how much each person is damaging the environment by emitting CO2. So how people produce CO2? By living, all right? People produce CO2 just by breathing, okay? So while you guys are living, you are producing CO2 every second because we breathe in, breathe out. When we breathe out the carbon dioxide, okay? But that's not really a big deal, you know, if you just, you know, breathe in, breathe out. Um, that's not a big deal. But if you also engage in activities such as burning household waste and driving your car and perhaps consuming electricity, then you are contributing so much more carbon dioxide to our atmosphere. Okay, so basically this is telling us who are creating more carbon dioxide compare, yeah, in all these 1, 2, 3, 4 countries. Okay, so it is quite obvious that United Kingdom is at the top. So the British, they produce the most carbon dioxide. Each person contribute to the greatest amount of carbon dioxide every year. Okay, so that's what it means. Now, how would you describe this chart? Okay, using chronological organizational strategy. Okay, so for example, if you describing change in figures, okay, I think the best example here would be Sweden. Okay, if you look at Sweden, and it's represented by this dotted line right here. All right, this is Sweden. Let me just use a different color. Okay, so this is Sweden. Right, it's represented by this dotted line. Okay, so it would be quite confusing if you just randomly explain event without looking at the time. Like if you say, oh, in 1987, the average amount of carbon dioxide produced in Sweden is about 7 tons. And in 1987, the highest amount of CO2 was reached at over 10 tons. And then in 2007, that is where the lowest amount of CO2 was produced, and it was at about 5 tons. And from 1967 to 1977, there's an increase in the amount of CO2 produced per person. Okay, so this is going to be quite confusing. Okay, so this is bad organizational strategy. Okay, so in this case here, you just want to start from 1967. Okay, start at the beginning of the timeline. Okay, and then you mark at any moment that you find important or interesting. Okay, so if you just focus on Sweden alone, then we will see that, okay, we should talk about how much carbon dioxide the peoples in Sweden, people in Sweden were producing in 1967. Okay, and then we can talk about how the rate of carbon dioxide emissions rose quite quickly, all right, to about 10 tons per person in just 10 years. Okay, but then the next event should be about a drop, right? A significant drop, because it's keep on falling until it was below where it began. It began as more than 8 tons, but about 20 years later, the amount of CO2 produced per person just dropped to about 7. Okay, so that's quite an improvement. So that means the country is producing less carbon dioxide, so it's contributing less to the global warming. Okay, and the rate of emission will just continue to fall, even though it's at a much lower rate compared to the rate between 1977 to 1987. So that is going to be the next thing you want to talk about. So there are basically 4 events that you want to describe chronologically. Okay, so let's see how it should be written. All right, so for example, you can say, well, in 1967, the Swedish produced about 7 tons of carbon dioxide on average per person. Over the next 10 years, the amount of average CO2 emission went up quickly to over 10 tons in 1977. However, over the next 10 years, a significant drop can be seen in the amount of CO2 produced per person from the 10 tons level to just slightly above 6 tons in 1987. Okay, and from 1987 to 2007, the average carbon dioxide emission continued to fall, even at a slightly slower rate, but it continued to fall until it reached at the level of about 5 tons, which marks the lowest carbon dioxide emission produced over the entire year in 2007. Okay, so it's going to sound something like this if you use chronological strategy. Now, chronological strategy works in many situations too. Okay, for example, when you when you want to talk about your experience. Okay, so what you have done in life, that you go to a job interview and they ask you about your work experience or your education. So you want to start by talking about, your education at primary level, secondary level, tertiary level. Okay, and if you have any job experience, you can start by talking your first job, your second job, your third job, so on and so forth. Okay, but chronology might not be ideal, and in a situation where you have so much details to cover in a limited time. Okay, for example, if you have to talk about your work experience, your experience or the skills and knowledge that you develop from all your work experience, then you don't want to be talking about, okay, this is the first job that I took and it teach me that. The second job I did was this, and you probably don't want to do it like this. Okay, instead you will use a different organizational strategy, which is what we're going to discuss next. It is called categorization. Okay, all right, let's just move on to the next organizational strategy. Okay, where is it? Yeah, okay. Analysis and classification. I just want to talk about this first because it's sort of related to chronological or sequential strategy. Okay, I want to talk about classification. Yep, classification. Okay, so classification, what is it? It's basically all about putting things in different groups or different categories. Okay, now imagine, say if you travel abroad for your holidays, okay, and you spend 2 weeks in that particular country, and then you come back to tell your friends about what a wonderful experience you had. But if you don't have so much time, say you only have 3 minutes to talk about your 2 weeks experience, okay, then going through the whole thing using chronological organizational strategy will not be ideal. Okay, because otherwise you have to start by talking like, okay, on the first day, I arrived at the airport at what time. Then from then I call an Uber to take me to my hotel. Okay, once I reached my hotel, I did what? Then I left my hotel heading towards this restaurant, blah, blah, blah. Okay, on the second day, I got on a bus to go to this place, and we did some shopping, we took some pictures, we upload some of our photos on Instagram and Facebook, we got some likes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I mean, maybe for the first couple of days, it's going to sound interesting, okay? But for the, for the subsequent day, suppose you talk about every day, what you've done every day, then there's going to be repeated information, okay? Because you're going to be the activities are the same every day. You go out to some place for photos, you eat, yeah, you buy some stuff and you head home. Okay, this is going to be a routine. The only difference is the place that you go to, like different restaurant that you eat, places that you go for shopping. Yes, these are going to be different. Activities the same. Okay, so it's going to sound boring. Okay, and in and if you take into account the use of vocabulary, that's going to be repetitive use of some words. Okay, so that's not ideal. Okay, instead you want to use a different method called a classification. Okay, where you have to sort of have your main idea first, right? You need to have your main idea. So you can say, for example, oh, my trip to China was wonderful. Okay, all right. And then when you go about describing your journey, your trip, instead of talking about your first day or your first week, you start by talking about things that fascinate you the most. Maybe food. Okay, you can talk about food. Now you don't need to talk about food in chronological order. Okay, you can talk about some of the main things that you like about food. All right, you can talk about Chinese food being very cheap. You can talk about Chinese food being very healthy, or Chinese food being very convenient, like fast, for example. Okay, so these are this is how you break it down to different category. Okay, so you don't need to worry about time order, what happened first, what happened next. Okay, so when you're done talking about food, you can move on to talk about something else that fascinates you. You can talk about the Chinese public transportation. Okay, you can talk about the trans in terms of punctuality. Okay, in terms of uh, the efficiency, like how fast it is. All right, and I don't know, talk about how modern, how comfortable the public transportation is. Okay, and all these things don't have to be in time order at all. All right, so it sounds like, oh, my trip to China was amazing. Okay, first thing I like about China is the food. Chinese food is quite affordable. Like a meal costs about 80 to 100 Thai baht only. Snacks cost about the same, and also Chinese foods are very healthy because they contain a lot of herbs and blah blah blah. Okay, so it sounds something like this, right? Okay, now what are some other organizational strategies that you guys should know? Cause and effects. Okay, cause and effects is the strategy, organizational strategy, when you have to talk about problems. Okay, so every time when you see, hey, please state this problem, explain this problem, you want to think about cause effect, right? Because when we have problems, right, what is problem exactly? So problem is an event, okay, that is in the middle between event uh, between event A and event C. You can think of problem as event B, for example. Okay, so A, B, C like that. Okay, so problem is event B. Now problem cannot just you know exist by itself without something to trigger it. So event A trigger a problem, and when this problem comes to life, when it's appear, it's going to create some impact. So something will happen as a result of its existence. So that's event C. Okay, so this is how you could look at the problem. Okay, so problem is an event that is in the middle between two other events. Now, let's give you guys some example. Okay, so let's think about um, 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 I don't know, air pollution, for example. Okay, air pollution. So air pollution is a problem, right? How will you explain it? Okay, you have to explain about things that pollute the air. So what are the activities that can pollute the air? Now, when the air is polluted, what happened next? Okay, all right. Now, what happened next will be the effect. All right. Now, what happened before air pollution is the cause. Okay. So, can you think about the cause of air pollution? Well, any activities that involve burning. All right. Whatever you burn, are you going to extract carbon dioxide and some other harmful gases? Right. Okay, so the burning of fossil fuel, that's a very generic term, right? So would we be a little bit more specific? Okay, so what kind of activities cause fossil fuel to be burned? Um, Using public transportation, no, driving your own personal vehicles. Okay, so the vehicles that run on gasoline, okay, the kind of vehicles where you have to uh, turn the ignition, okay, with this combustion engine that had this piston that move up and down, compressing the fuel air mixture and get ignited by the spark plug. Okay, now that is the kind of engine that produce carbon dioxide because it's that's explosion, that's combustion of the fuel air mixture. Okay, so once it is combusted, it produces byproducts like carbon dioxide and other harmful gases. Okay, so that is an example of an event that cause carbon emission, which pollute the air. Other activities include the incineration of household waste. Okay, if you ever travel outside of Bangkok along this road heading towards the Isan part, right? ถนนมิตรภาพ, right? Sometimes you will see people burning the glass field, right? The burnt grass field just to clear the land to grow crops. Okay, so that is a quick and cheap way to clear the land, right? Because you can just burn things up, right? You don't have to waste your time and effort. You just let the fire do the work, right? But in consequence, it's going to create so much carbon dioxide, so much air pollution, all right? And also a lot of dust as well, like PM 2.5, for example. So those are the activities, those are the causes of air pollution. Now, what are the impacts? Okay, so when the air is polluted, everything that needs air will be adversely affected. So we breathe in the air, we take the air into our lungs, okay, but the air is dirty. It contains small dust particles and other harmful gases. It's going to damage our respiratory system. It's going to damage our lung, our air sac, right? And that's not good, right? Okay, so that's a consequence. So that's how you explain cause and effect. All right. So every time you have to talk about problem, think about cause effects. Right. Okay. Next, spatial organizational strategy. That is not very common. You probably don't get to use that very often. So spatial is all about explaining an image. Okay, suppose you have a diagram of something. All right, maybe like like atom, for example. All right, how would you describe this? So you have atom, you have N and P. And then you have valence shell. You have like yeah. So all this little dot is electron. Okay. So how do you describe this? I mean, there's no clear method of describing it, right? Okay. So special organization usually start off from it could be inside out. Okay, so you want to start by looking at the center of whatever. In case of atom, you can start by looking at the center and make your way outward. So for example, at the center, you see nucleus and proton. So you can say, oh, atom at the core, it consists of nucleus and proton. Okay, what is nucleus, what is proton? If the information is given, you can talk about it. If it's not given, then ignore it. All right, at the center, you have nucleus and proton. Okay, and um, uh, and outside of the core, you will have what we call a valence shell, where electron of this atom just float around. Okay, in this second shell, you have about, actually it starts with two, but anyway, I skip one valence shell. Okay, there's 4 electrons. Okay, and in the next valence shell, there are 8 electrons, something like that. Okay, so that's basically how you would describe some image. Okay, so you can start by looking at the core at the center and make your way outward. Okay, that's quite common, but sometimes you have to, it's make more sense to start by describing the surrounding. Okay, so you would go from outward, making your way to the center. All right, so that's no clear way anyway. It's sort of not very clear how you should proceed. All right, anyway, let's move on to this okay, order of importance. Right. So this is the next organizational strategy I like to talk about, order of importance. Okay. So suppose you want to talk about the advantages of your proposed solutions. Okay, advantages of your proposed solutions. Let's say you propose that, we should improve public transportation to tackle traffic congestion. Okay, now because you're writing a paragraph under time situation, so you can't just talk about every benefits. Okay, that will be the result of improving public transportation. In fact, you are limited to just 3 main benefits. Okay, now what you should do is you have to rate each of your 3 benefits in terms of how impactful or how important it is. Okay, and you want to start by talking about the least important benefit. Why would you want to do that? Why don't you start by talking about benefit that is the most profound? Why would you talk about benefit that is the least profound or least important? The reason is because you want your readers to keep on reading your work. You want to engage them. Okay, you want to keep giving them something so that they want more and more and more. Okay, all right, so that's the reason why you don't want to start with the biggest idea. You want to start with the smallest idea and let them want more. Okay, let them carry on. Okay, so that's one reason. The second reason is you want the impact of your biggest idea to last with them longer. okay? Because people tend to remember the last thing that has been spoken better than the first thing. Okay, so the way people memories is, I think, structure is more like a stack, right? So it's last in, first out, not first in, first out, not FIFO, not like a queue. Okay. All right. It's more like a stack. All right. So you tend to remember the last thing better than the first thing because the first piece of information, get, pile up. All right. Okay. So your first piece of information is at the bottom and it's getting piled up. All right. It's kind of like when you're stacking potato chips in a bottle. All right. So when you open the lid, all right, you will see the last piece that you put in the bottle first. Okay. So memory works somewhat like that, right? You remember the last thing better than the first thing. So you want the impression to last. Okay. Now, this kind of technique is not just common in writing; it's common in sport event as well. All right. If you ever watch sport events like boxing, okay, they will put the main event last. All right, they will start the show with some uh, with some fights that are not very important, right? Fights that you know that 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 are not the main event. Okay, why are they doing this? Because you know they want to excite people more and more, right? They want um, to engage the audience. Okay, so it's kind of like snacks, you the more you eat, the more you want. Okay, so yeah, so this you will see that this strategy is not just common in writing, but also in other stuff as well. Okay, all right. Now, the last organizational strategies I would like to talk about is comparison and contrast. Okay. Now, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on this, okay, because I think it has many practical applications. Okay, so I think I'm going to give you guys a 10 minutes break, okay, and then we come back to talk about comparison and contrast organizational strategies. Okay, I'll see you in 10 minutes. All righty. All right, so comparison and contrast, right? Okay, so basically comparisons, contrasts about talk about two different things. Okay, so you have two different things. For example, if you look at this fairy tale example, you want to compare Pinocchio and Frankenstein. Okay, so they're two different novels, right? And if you want to compare and contrast these two novels, how would you do it? Now, there are actually two different strategy to organize your content. Okay, so the first strategy is called block technique. All right, it's called a block technique. So a block technique is when you decide the number of your body paragraph depending on the number of items, the number of things that you are comparing. So in this case, if you're comparing two different novels, then there are only two items, so two body paragraph. Now, inside each of the paragraph, you will have a focus on, for example, so in a block technique, you will have one single main idea. Like this paragraph will be based upon Pinocchio. Okay, so you will not see the word Frankenstein anywhere in this paragraph. Okay, but then depending on the number of aspects that you want to include in each paragraph, like do you want to talk about the creation of Pinocchio, okay, and every other things, then you can include all those aspects in one paragraph. So once that's finished, you start the next paragraph. Okay, now the aspects can be the same. You can talk about the creator of the character Frankenstein, because Frankenstein and Pinocchio, they are both invented things, right? They're not living creatures. They were made by some scientists or carpenters, right? Okay, so you want to talk about the creators. Okay, you can talk about the relationship between the characters and the creators. Whatever. Okay, so block techniques is good in sense that it helps you to quickly determine how many body paragraph you will have. Okay, so the number of body paragraph depend on the number of things that you want to compare and contrast. All right. Okay. Next is block technique. So block technique can also be used in this situation. However, the number of body paragraph does not depends on what you're comparing, but it depends on the number of aspects that you are comparing. Okay. Now, in each paragraph, you will have two different things being compared side by side. Okay. Two different things being compared side by side. Two different things being compared side by side. Okay, so the advantages and disadvantages of this kind of organization is that for block techniques, if you don't have so much information, then it is easy for you to write because you will focus only on one thing at a time. Okay, but if you have a lot of information, then it will be hard for your reader to keep track of everything you have explained. Now, point by point, we'll do a better job of we do a better job when you have many aspects that you want to discuss. Let's look at a more real life example. Let's just say that I'm running a YouTube channel and I want to compare one cell phone model with the other cell phone model. So I'm comparing two different cell phone models from different brands. Okay, so let's say the first brand that I'm comparing is Apple brand. Okay, Apple. And the other brand is Samsung. Okay, now what are the aspects that we are discussing or comparing and contrasting? So we want to discuss in terms of battery life. We want to discuss the repairability. Okay. What else should we discuss? Maybe the I don't know, resolution, camera resolution. What else should we discuss? Processing power. Right. What else? Maybe connectivity. Okay, so as you can see, there are 5 aspects that we want to discuss. Now imagine it if we use block techniques. If we use block technique, then it is quite obvious that we're going to use 2 paragraphs only. Doesn't matter how many aspects we have. Okay, we may have 10 aspects, we still use 2 body paragraphs. Okay, so if you're using block techniques, then the first major supporting idea will just be Apple. Okay, now let's just make up a model. So let's say Apple iPhone 10R. Okay, all right. So in this paragraph, I will have to talk about all these 5 things. The battery life, repairability, camera resolution, processing power, connectivity, right? And the next paragraph will be about the other brand. So this would be about Samsung, Galaxy, A7, 2018, something like that. Okay, but then again, I'll be talking about battery life, repairability, camera resolution, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now let's give it a try, shall we? Okay, let's see how this make you feel. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to give some random details here, okay, because I don't remember everything about all these phone models. Okay, so let's start. Okay, first I'd like to talk about Apple iPhone 10R. Okay, as far as battery life is concerned, Apple iPhone 10R comes with a 4,000 milliamp hours, maybe 2,500 milliamp hours battery. Okay, and it has a nominal voltage of 3.8 volt. Okay, and its life cycle is about 1,000 cycles, which means after 1,000 charging cycles, its efficiency will drop to maybe 80%. Okay, and subsequent use will cause the efficiency to drop to perhaps 70, 60%. Now, when you're 60%, your battery is as good as dead because it's going to die very, very quickly. Okay. As for in terms of repairability, Apple iPhone 10Rs, they have a lot of cheap OEM parts or third-party parts available, either online or offline or from a store. Okay, the most expensive part would be the screen, right? The Apple iPhone screen is probably the most expensive, but it's still quite affordable. Okay, now suppose I have talked about other aspects like camera resolution, processing power, connectivity, and I move on to Samsung Galaxy A7 2018. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the same thing. So the battery life of this cell phone model is about 6,000 milliamp hours. Okay, and it's should be able to last your day-to-day usage for about 4 to 5 hours. Okay, its lifespan is limited to about 1,000 cycles, so it will die after 1,000 full charging. So from depletion all the way to 100%. Okay, that's one cycle. So after 1,000 cycle, its capacity is going to drop significantly. Okay, in terms of repairability, there are not many parts that are available for you to obtain. Okay, so it could be quite tough. It could be challenging if a parts that you have to replace cannot be found in the market. Okay, and the screen is very expensive. Okay, now you will notice that the longer we spend on each paragraph, right, the more difficult for you to keep pace, right? And at the end of the day, the audience will have to make a lot of effort, trying to like go back to what you say and then compare each items just to see the differences. Okay, because the writers are not doing it when they're explaining it. When the writers explain, they only talk about all the details that are associated with each, but they're not comparing, right? Okay, so block techniques may not be suitable. Okay, when you have so many bullet points, so many aspects you have to cover. Now let's compare that with point-by-point technique. So point-by-point technique, you divide your body paragraph not based on what you're comparing, but based on the aspects that you want to cover. So you will have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 body paragraph. Okay, now your first body paragraph will be about battery life. Okay, and you will compare the battery life between iPhone 10R versus Samsung. Okay, Samsung's Galaxy A7. Okay, so when you do this, right, you can start by talking about the capacity or the milliamp hours. Okay, but then in this paragraph, you not only focus on 10R, but also A7 as well. So you would describe the capacity in a manner that your audience will see the major differences. For example, you will say, okay, in terms of battery life, iPhone 10Rs is equipped with 2,500 milliamp hours battery, okay, which can last you for maybe 4 hours, okay, 4 hours, right? That's for 10R. Whereas if you buy Samsung Galaxy S7, it comes with a 4,000 milliamp hours. Okay, so it's almost twice as large. Okay, this is going to last you for 5 to 6 hours. Okay, per one charge. Okay, so when you do it like this, it's quite easy for your audience to follow. So if your audience put emphasis on things like battery life, okay, they don't have to go any further. I mean, they don't have to watch your entire video, okay? Because if they prioritize battery life, if battery is the most important thing that they have to take into consideration before deciding on a model to buy, then this paragraph is all they need, okay? All right, and the subsequent paragraph will follow a similar manner. Okay, so say the next paragraph is about repairability. Okay, so in this paragraph, you don't just focus on iPhone or Samsung. You talk about both of them in terms of repairability. Okay, so you will say some things like, okay, for iPhone 10R, it is, right, there's a lot of parts, I would say cheap parts, a lot of cheap parts are available online and at the shops. Okay, that's for XR. Okay, and for Galaxy's S7, you might say parts are difficult to source and some are quite expensive, such as screen, something like that. Okay. All right, so that is just a different method of organizing your content, block technique and point by point. Okay, you will see that in the future when we talk about argument essay. I will rely mostly on block techniques, not because it's more superior than point by point, but it is quite easy to write. Okay, it's quite easy to decide on the number of body paragraph that you will need. Okay, so that is it for chapter 2. All right, so we will go back to the pre-test and we will make a second attempt to see if we can do better than the first time. All right, so I will give you guys 3 minutes to complete this test and I'll give you the answer. All right. So let's look at the first statement here. This says this is just a paraphrase of the topic. So that is not quite true, isn't it? So this is not just a paraphrase of the topic. No, it's the main idea of your essay. Okay, it is a claim that you want to pass to your reader. It's something that you want your reader to accept. Right. Next, it is important to narrow down the focus topic. So that is quite true. Okay, so your thesis will be based on the topic. Okay, if your topic is broad, then your thesis will have to be broad, and a broad thesis is not good. Okay, so you need to have a focused topic. Okay, and you can narrow it down by adding layers to it, by adding some complement to that mouth phrase of yours. Okay. Number 3, you can ask a question out of your focus topic to form a thesis. Yes, okay. So a thesis cannot just be a phrase. Okay, the thesis will have to be a complete sentence. Okay, so sometime in order to do that, you have to turn your narrow topic into a question and then try to answer that question. The answer to that question will serve as the main idea of your essay or as a thesis. Okay. Number 4, this is your answer to the question. Well, yes, absolutely. If your assignment asks the questions, okay, for example, do you believe that by raising the gas price, the traffic congestion can be solved? Okay. Now, whether you say yes, raising the gas price is a good solution, or no, raising the gas price will not be an effective solution, either one is the answer to the question and is also the main idea of your essay. Number 5, you can use phrases in your thesis. This is a big no. You cannot use phrase in your thesis at all. Why? Because a phrase doesn't have a clear meaning. It's an incomplete sentence. A meaning can only be delivered only when a sentence is complete. Next, an outlining will prevent you from going off topic. Yes, outlining will prevent you from going off topic, definitely. Because it is sort of, it's like a simulation, right? It simulates how your circuit will work before you actually buy all the parts and solder them together, okay? So outlining will list all your ideas. So you will have a chance to see how everything's unfold, how your essays develop from the start to the end, and will also enable you to quickly troubleshoot when you come across any ideas that are not in a logical order. Number 7, you need formal outlining for every kind of writing. So formal outlining for every kind of writing? Well, not exactly. Well, it's always good to use formal outlining because it gives you a much clearer picture, okay? But a clear picture always comes at a cost, and that cost is the time that you have to spend doing it, okay? So perhaps not for every kind of writing, especially in a time situation. Number 8, a good thesis should not be too broad, too narrow, unreasonable, or underdeveloped. This is definitely true. Okay, so whenever you write a thesis, okay, it cannot be too broad, because too broad means you will need more time and resources to explain, okay? Not too narrow either, all right? Because if it's too narrow, what happened? If it's too narrow, then you don't know what to explain any further. It's already clear, right? Unreasonable, if it's unreasonable, then there's a chance that your readers will not buy the idea. They will not be convinced. Doesn't matter how hard you try to do it. If it doesn't sound logical, doesn't matter how hard you try to convince me. It's not going to work. Okay. Or underdeveloped. Okay. This is, if it is underdeveloped, then it's not clear. All right. If it is not clear, then I don't know what am I believing. Okay. Right. So that is it. That's all for your chapter 2. Now let's just take a short pause here because I have to switch to my next chapter. And this next chapter is chapter 3. Alrighty. Okay, so body paragraph. So this chapter is all about body paragraph. Okay, so before we dive in, let's check out some of the statements and see whether they're true or false. Okay, number 1, body paragraph help to make arguments strong and convincing. Is that true or not? You decide by yourself. Number 2, body paragraph allows readers to know when a central idea begins and when it ends. Is that true or not? You decide by yourself, okay? Number 3, body paragraph have the same structures as the essay. Is it true or not that body paragraph have the same structure as the essay? Number 4, the topic sentence must only be at the beginning. Right. Is that true or not? Number 5, inductive and deductive are 2 different ways to organize a paragraph. Number 6, the inductive style begins with the main idea and evidence follows. Number 7, the deductive begins with the main idea, which is supported by evidence. Number 8, we can use anecdotes in our college assignment. So anecdote is a short story that comes from your experience, which could be made up entirely. Number 9, we can use only one type of support in our writing. And number 10, expert opinions and analysis can be used to validate our thesis. There we go. All right, so let's talk about body paragraph. So it says here that most people would feel overwhelmed and more than a little annoyed when they see that the entire essay is one giant paragraph without any effort to break it into paragraph in order to make it easy for the audience to see shift from idea to idea. Okay, so body paragraph serve pretty much like like a knife that slice your pieces up to eatable portion. Okay, paragraph is actually everywhere. To be honest, it's not just in writing. Okay, think about when you watch your favorite TV shows, right? Okay, your TV show usually comes in episodes, right? And episodes make up a season. Why would they divide it in episodes? Because it will be easy for you to go back and rewatch. Okay, says you forgot, some things about, forgot what happened in episode 3, right? Now, if all episodes are connected into just one video, okay, lasting for, I don't know, okay, one episode is probably 40 minutes, right? So if you have 5 episodes, that's 200 minutes. 200 minutes, that's about 3 hours, almost 4 hours, so three hours. Okay, so it's going to be very difficult to try to locate that missing information, not missing information, I mean, the event that you want to rewatch. It's going to be hard. Okay, so you have to go through all the timeline. in that 3 hours. Not easy, okay? But when they divide that into 40 minutes episode, okay, it's going to be easy because you can just read the title of each episode and figure out that, hey, the information that I want is going to be in that episode. It's kind of like when you skim and scan, when you read, you have a long passage, okay, and you want to find a particular information. Instead of reading the whole passage all over again, you can just skim through by just reading the first word, the first sentence only, so that you know what this paragraph is about. Okay, so that's the reason why we have to divide, big chunk of information into manageable portions, like paragraph. Okay, so that's why. Right, now let's talk about what a body paragraph, a good one, okay, should be made up of. Okay, so a good body paragraph should be made up of 3 things: a topic, support of the main ideas, and its applicable conclusion, and also perhaps the transition to the next paragraph. Okay, so what are all these stuff? So a topic sentence can usually will be put at the beginning of each paragraph to introduce the main idea of the paragraph. Okay, so at this point here, don't get confused with the main idea of the essay. The main idea of the essay is not in your body paragraph. It is in the introduction paragraph. So it's the paragraph before your body paragraph. Okay. Okay. However, each paragraph will need to have some governing ideas. Okay. So we call topic sentence the governing sentence of each body paragraph. Okay, and the topic sentence will also have its own main idea, right? Okay, you can sort of think of these essay structures as the political governments, think of, okay, suppose your whole essay is equivalent to our country, Thailand, all right? The introduction would be equivalent to the government. Okay, it will be equivalent to the government of people who runs the country. So how does our government runs our country? They do nothing but making policies. All right, they're going to make policy for all different departments: financial policy, cultural policy, all kinds of policies. They're going to be making policies, and those policies will be turned into laws, okay, which dictates every other department to follow. Okay, if certain policies will have to be practiced by the people, right, then there will be a law that will punish those who refuse to abide by the law, which is based on their policies. Okay, so government is just make policies, okay, and then they make new laws, then set up some punishment, okay, for those who refuse to follow the laws based on their new policies. Okay, right. So introduction is a government. So the body paragraph is just a subdivision, or like a town, like a province. Okay, so introduction, government of Thailand. Body paragraph, maybe the governor of Bangkok. All right, so the governor of Bangkok, he can make a policy, yes. All right, he can make a decision on things as long as his decision is aligned with the government's policy, with the government ideas. Okay, so let's say this government is so much concerned about sustainability, about the government. So everything they do, they will bear in mind that the decision should be in favor of protecting the environment, the air, the water supply, and so on and so forth. Okay, so whatever decision that the Bangkok governor make, he has to bear in mind that his decision will be for the protection of the environment. Okay, right. So if he has to, for example, solve a traffic jam problem, okay, and he has two different choices, between construction of a new railway, building more roads, or promoting the use of EV car, then he's probably going to promote the use of EV car, because that strategy will do the least damage to the environment, because constructing a railway is going to create pollution during the process of building the infrastructures and everything, right? Building roads, there's no question about it, right? The moment they start building road, it's going to be a lot of pollutions. Okay, so promoting EV might be the best strategy here as far as reducing environmental damage is concerned. So like that, okay? So that was topic sentence is, okay? It's going to build upon the main idea. So the main idea is going to govern everything, okay? Topic sentence is going to be in line with the main idea of the essay, and is going to govern the idea inside its own paragraph. Supports are explanation, okay? So suppose your topic sentence says there are so many advantages of doing regular exercise. Okay, the support of the main ideas will have to shed some light upon those benefits. So what those benefits are. Okay, so it could be, for example, regular exercise can improve your bone health. Okay, improve your bone health. So once you have talked about this benefit, then you have to explain a little bit, okay, how exercise can improve your bone health, right? Okay, and then you can move on to some other benefits of exercise. You could say, for example, a regular exercise can I don't know, helps to control your weight, help with the weight control, and then explain. Okay, right. And it also depends on the amount of information that you have in that paragraph. Okay, if you have 5 different benefits of doing regular exercise in one paragraph, then it might help to have a little bit of a concluding sentence for that paragraph, so that your readers will be able to remember the key message of this paragraph. Okay. Now, one thing you can also do at the end of this paragraph is to offer a transition to the next paragraph. Okay. So the transition to the next paragraph is going to be maybe a short sentence to tell your readers what they're going to see next. All right. Okay. So that's what make up a body paragraph: a topic sentence, supports, and conclusion. Now let's have a quick look at an example of a body paragraph here. All right. So let us read the first sentence. It says, the African country of the Democratic Republic of Congo has had a turbulent past. Okay. Okay, so that right there is your topic sentence. So what does this topic sentence do? The African country of the Democratic Republic of Congo has had a turbulent past. So it's going to raise question about the term turbulent past. So anyone who come across this word will wonder, what is that turbulent past? what are the problems, right? Because turbulent past mean their past was not steady. They didn't have stability. Okay, so when a state did not have stability, it indicated the state might have experienced some problems. So you want to know what those problems are. Okay, so that serves as the main idea of this paragraph. Okay, it tells you that, okay, this paragraph will be about the problems that used to exist in this African country. Okay, now the following sentence will serve as the support of this main idea. So it says here that it was colonized by Belgium in the late 19th century and officially declared a Belgian territory by King Leopold in 1895. Okay. The country called Belgian Congo after 1908 was under Belgian rules for 65 years. And then in 1960, after several years of unrest, Congo was granted independence from Belgium. The country was unstable for several years. 2 presidents were elected and deposed, and there was much arguing over who should run the countries and how. Finally, in 1965, a man named Mobutu Sese Seko rose to power. Though the country was remarkably rich in resources such as diamonds, under Sese Seko rules, the people live in complete squalor. So that is your support. Okay, so it has become clear what those problems are. So the problems are to do with their politics. Okay, with the first problem being about colonization by Belgium. Okay, so the Belgian king sent their troops to Congo, colonize it. Okay, so it didn't state clearly what the how Congo was unfairly treated by Belgium. Okay, but it insinuate that under the rules of the king, the country was under a lot of pressure. It went through a lot of unrest. Okay, now after the end of colonization, when it won its independence, Congo has been under 2 presidents. Okay, and it is clear from the paragraph that under the rule of each president, Congo was not stable. All right, there was military coup. There were attempt to depose each president. Okay, right, and even though Congo has a lot of resources like diamond, the people live in poverty, and there's a lot of unrest. Okay, so that sort of explained the problems, although it didn't really clarify what those problems are. Okay. All right, the last sentence says, still, Sese Seko brought some stability to the region. He ruled for 32 years until people finally rebelled in 1997. So that served as a concluding sentence. Okay, so the concluding sentence sort of tells how everything's ended. Okay, so all the problems ended with this man named Sese Seko. Okay, so after he was elected the president, he came up with the idea and policies to restore stability in this country. All right, so that's an example of a body paragraph. Now let's have a look at exercise 1. So in exercise 1, we are given 4 sentences, and we have to make a paragraph with these 4 sentences. The question is, how are we going to do it? All right. Now in this box, there are some transitional words that you can use. Now, there is one little mistake here because I accidentally put the transitional word in the sentence, so I have already crossed it off. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to put all these four sentences in order. What should come first? What should be the main idea? What should be the support? And what should be the concluding sentence? And then use transitional word in the box below to connect all those four sentences together. All right, so I will give you about 5 minutes to attempt this on your own, and then I'll come back and show you how it is done. All right. Well, let's see. Okay. So the first sentence says the fare will be very expensive, to the point where commuters no longer see the advantage of using public transportation. Okay, so we will put a pin on that. We sort of understand what this means, but we don't know yet whether this should be the main idea or not. Okay, so we have to read the next sentence to see the relationship that this first sentence may have with the next sentence. Okay, so the next sentence say they could return to the use of personal vehicles and the history will repeat itself. Okay, so it's quite clear that number one is the event that leads to sentence number two, because sentence number one talk about the fare being very expensive. Okay, now we're not sure what fare they're talking about. Okay, but probably some bus fare or public transportation fare. So when the fares are too high, then people don't like to use public transport anymore. And when they don't like to use public transportation anymore, sentence number two say that they will return to using personal vehicles. So now we can see the relationship between one and two. All right, hang on. It seems that my pencil is not turning on. Let's restart this one. It's good that I have another spare pencil. Okay, so one and two, right? They're related. Now, sentence three says there are many other more sustainable alternatives to the rise in petrol. Okay. Um, so that is talking about a different thing now. It says many alternative. The first and the second sentence talk about the reason and the result, like cause and effect. Okay, so the cost is fare being expensive. Effect is people go back to use their personal vehicles. So sentence number three sounds more like a transition. Okay, transition to the next paragraph. Okay, so it's not like two leading to three, but three should follow one and two. Now look at sentence number four. It say a rise in the price of petrol make public transportation less attractive to the public. Okay, so now we sort of understand what was going on so far. You say, so when the government increased the price of petrol, right, it's going to make people want to use public transportation less. So what is the relationship between increasing the gas price and making people shun making people less interested in using public transportation? Well, one and two sort of have the explanation. All right, sentence one say, well, when the gas price is increased, then the fare will have to increase along with it. And when the fare price increase, then nobody want to use public transportation anymore because they will be paying as much as they would for the gasoline. So for number four, this should be okay. So sentence one and sentence two, they're going to serve as a support for sentence four, and sentence three will offer the transition. Okay, so let's us rewrite the whole thing. All right, so we're going to start with sentence number four. So a rise in the price of petrol could make public transportation less attractive to the public. Okay, so a rise in the price of public transportation, could a rise in the price of petrol could make public transportation less attractive to the public. All right, so sentence one is going to explain why a rise in the gas price is making public transportation not so attractive. Okay, so the connector that we should use here is because. All right, so because what? Because the fare will be very expensive. To the point where commuters no longer see the advantage of using public transport. Okay, now sentence two is elaborating upon sentence one, okay? It provides the consequence. So we can say as a result, they could return to the use of personal vehicles. And this story will repeat itself. Right? Okay. Now, sentence number three will follow and we do offer transition to the next paragraph. So we need some signal language, like by examining the issue more closely. There are many other more sustainable alternative to the rise in petrol. Okay, so I hope you guys can see it. There's not much space for me to write. Okay, so let's read it. So now that we have put all these four sentences in the right order, it should sound more reasonable now. So a rise in the price of petrol could make public transportation less attractive to the public because the fares would be very expensive to the point where the commuters no longer see the advantage of using public transportation. As a result, they could return to the use of personal vehicles, and the history will repeat itself. So by examining the issue more closely, there are many other alternatives that are more sustainable to the rise in the price of petrol. All right. So there you go. So these are the connectors that we can use to, link all the sentences to form a good body paragraph. Next, topic sentence. Okay, so like I said earlier, topic sentence provide the main idea for the body paragraph. Okay, so topic sentence are like mini thesis statement. It's express the main idea. The thesis statement express the main idea of your essay, whereas topic sentence express the main idea of each paragraph. All right, so that is all. All right, you guys understand all this. Okay, but what are the good characteristics of a topic sentence? Okay, now a good topic sentence should, number one, make an assertion about the subject. Number two, be general enough to encompass all the ideas in the paragraph. So characteristics of a topic sentence, of a good topic, is quite similar to a good characteristics of a thesis statement. Right. Okay, so there's no difference in making a topic sentence and a thesis statement. Okay, they have the same standards. They both have to be, they shouldn't be too broad or too narrow or too unreasonable. Okay, they should raise some questions as people read it. When people read topic sentence, they should become interested and they should have some questions. All right, so there's no difference. Now, it says here that it is logical to begin a paragraph with topic sentence, but there's no rule compelling you to do so. There are different ways to lay out an argument within a paragraph, and depending on the one you use, your topic sentence might be better as the last line rather than the first. Okay, so topic sentence can either begin your paragraph or finish your paragraph. Okay, it is, of course, more common that you begin your paragraph with a topic sentence, because by doing so, your readers know what to expect. Okay, but because of the different writing style, you can have your topic sentence at the end of your paragraph as well. Now let's talk about those two different style of writing a body paragraph. Now we call this deductive and inductive formats. So what are they? What is deductive and inductive format? Well, in a nutshell, the deductive format or deductive style is kind of like a pyramid. So a pyramid has a small tip, but has a large base. Now you can think of a small tip as how much you know about a particular subject. So a small tips mean you don't know much about that claim. Okay, but as you progress further and further, the pyramids become larger and larger, all right, toward the base. So by the end, you finish the paragraph, you have a lot more information. Now you understand the subject matter better when you at the bottom. Okay, so the pyramids is a very good analogy to show how your body paragraph should progress. It starts with a claim at the top, okay, and then it elaborates upon the claim, okay, through many sections, many different layers of the pyramid. Now, inductive is the other way around. For inductive format, you start off with some explanation, okay? So your reader will, at the beginning, be a little bit baffled, be a little bit confused to, hey, what is going on here? Where is this leading me to, right? They won't know, okay? But in the end, they're going to understand what all this about, what everything is all about. Okay, so inductive style is not quite common, in the academic world. Okay, but in the entertainment industry, inductive style has its own place. Think about when you watch a movie. All right, when you watch movie, you're going to see a lot of events. Events one, events two. In each scene, you might see different characters. All right, okay, and maybe the first two scenes are not related. People are just doing their own things, right? First scenes, you might have two characters doing their own stuff, and the following scene, you might have three characters doing their own stuff. Those two scenes might not be related at all, but as you keep on watching, you start to be able to connect the dots. You understand the reason why some characters were doing the stuff in the first scene, and you can connect all the dots now. You see how they are all related to each other. So by the time you finish watching the movie, you have understood how all those events in each scenes are related. Okay, that's inductive style. And that's not quite common in academic. All right, okay, because in academic, it is important that you make it clear to your readers what you are going to do. Okay, you have to do this because the person who grade you need to know whether you understand the subject matter and whether you understand the instruction or not. Okay, if they read your first sentence and it's shown nothing close to what they ask you to do, then they're probably not going to progress any further because they're going to think that your answer is completely off, right? It's completely not relevant, and that's bad. Okay. However, inductive is not that bad when it comes to writing an introduction, or when it comes to writing a body paragraph. Okay, because inductive style, you don't have to begin with the reasons why you're writing. You don't have to begin with main idea. You can just beat around the bush, okay, by talking about some facts that might sound surprising, just to capture your reader attention. Okay, so that's a good thing about inductive. Okay, you don't have to start by cutting to the chest. You can just take some time to 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 sort of motivate your readers, giving them some interesting information, even though they're not in orders, they're not well organized. All right, so let's have a look at an example of a paragraph written in deductive manner. So it says here that Thomas Edison is a genius. Whenever there is discussion about intelligence, most people would associate it with benchmarks such as the IQ score or school grades. But that may not always be the case for some people who may possess neither of those, as long as they can't change the world with their knowledge and skills. Thomas Edison was deprived of education as a young child and never went to any school or college. Yet he became the world's greatest inventor for introducing the first incandescent light that allows homes and buildings to be illuminated during nighttime like never before. Thomas Edison therefore deserved to be called a genius. So this is a standard deductive style of writing a body paragraph. So as you can see, this paragraph begins with a topic sentence. So it asserts a claim about Thomas Edison. I'm sorry, this is not the topic sentence. This is a topic sentence. It's right here. So this topic sentence, it asserts a claim about Thomas Edison. So what does it mean by asserting a claim? Basically, any sentence structure that follows this formula is asserting a claim. So for example, if I say, I am smart, that is already a claim right there, okay? Because I'm trying to convince you to believe that I am smart. So for me to achieve that, I will need some justification. I'll need to explain to you why you should believe that I am smart. But I'm not going to do that because I don't believe that I'm smart. Okay. All right. But this case here, we assert a claim by saying that Thomas Edison is a genius. So right now, some of you may not even know who Thomas Edison is. So it's going to be hard for me to convince you just by saying that Thomas Edison is a genius. Okay, so I'm going to need to explain that a little bit. Okay, so let's look at the explanation here. All right, the next line says, whenever there is discussion about intelligence, most people associate it with benchmark such as IQ or school grades. Okay, so this is his attempt to acknowledge generally accepted ideas. Okay, but he himself doesn't really believe in it. So this is more like acknowledging concession. So concession is something that you know, that you are aware of, but not believe. Okay, so you know that most people, in this case, the writer knows that many people use IQ or school grade to determine somebody's intelligence, but he's not believing that. Okay, because the following sentence say, but that may not always be the case. That may not always be the case for some people who may possess neither of those. Okay, so he's saying, so he's telling you that, hey, you should not use IQ score or school grade as a standard to judge someone's intelligence. Why? Because some people, they may not have IQ. Like how? If you were born in the 15th century, the terms IQ didn't even exist in that time. Okay? And if you didn't go to college, you can't have a grade. But that doesn't change the fact that you can still be smart. So let's see, what is he going to use as a ground theory, as something, as what we call an underpinning theory. Okay, so he wants us to abandon IQ score and school grades and embrace this instead. They can change as long as they can change the world with the knowledge and skills. So this is their refutation. So basically they're telling you not to worry too much about IQ or school grades, but put more emphasis on a person's ability to change the world with his knowledge. Okay, in other words, can he turn his knowledge into something that benefit humanity or not? If he can, then he's smart. So the condition here is quite simple. All right. So in terms of if clause, it's saying something like, if you can change the world with your knowledge, then you're smart. All right. Those people who believe in IQ and school grades say, if your IQ is high or if your grades are high, then you're smart. These guys come along and said, no. Don't put so much value in IQ score and school grades. Let's look at his practicality. Let's see how he can change the world. If he can change the world, let's call him smart. All right, so fair enough. So he has established an underpinning theory. Now, let's see how he's going to relate the claim, the subject of the claim, to his underpinning theory. So the next sentence he say, Thomas Edison was deprived of education, which means he did not have education as a young child and never went to any school or college. However, or yet, he became the world's greatest inventor for introducing the first incandescent light that allows home and building to be illuminated during nighttime like never before. So there we go. So he introduced the light that runs on electricity and it allows people to have some light at night like never before. So that is how this guy changed the world with his knowledge. Okay, so following this condition, if he can change the world with his knowledge, then he is smart. So since Thomas Edison can change the world with his invention of incandescent light, then Thomas Edison deserved to be called a genius. So you will notice that the claim and the concluding sentence are the same. So that's how you develop a deductive paragraph. Okay? Right. Next, let's have a look at the inductive paragraph. Now, this paragraph will be based upon the same thing. So it's going to be talking about Thomas Edison's. But you're going to see that the first sentence does not really say anything about the claim. Let's have a look. Thomas Edison was the world's greatest inventor for introducing the first incandescent light that allows room in building to be illuminated during nighttime like never before. However, this gentleman was deprived of education as a young child, and he never went to any school or college. Besides, the IQ theory was not even born in his time yet, so Edison could not boast about his school grades or his IQ test scores. Even so, that doesn't change the fact that this man has used his knowledge and skill to change the world, and since he has clearly achieved that, there's no reasons not to call him a genius. So, as you can see, this paragraph doesn't start with a claim. It basically gives you all the facts about this guy, Thomas Edison. It first says that, hey, this guy invented an incandescent light, and the benefit of incandescent light, that it's illuminate people's house at night time. Okay, it also tells you that this guy never went to school, and IQ theory wasn't there during his time, so he couldn't take any test. However, he changed the world with, the second to last sentence say, that doesn't change the fact this man used his knowledge and skill to change the world. So that right there is the underpinning theory. So he put that underpinning theory towards the end of the paragraph. Okay, all right. So it's actually, the the justification style is similar, right? Because he still need to use that. Why can't I write here? Okay, the justification style is similar because he still need to use that underpinning theory, which is that sentence. Okay, that served as a refutation and also an underpinning theory. Right. Okay. So in the end, we have a claim. There's no reason not to call him a genius. So that's the topic sentence. All right, which is a claim. But instead of preceding the paragraph, it finishes the paragraph. So that's inductive style. Okay. Now, exercise 2. All right, so we're going to take some time to try to divide the following paragraph into multiple paragraph. Okay, so we have one big piece of writing right here. Okay, now let's see how many paragraphs we can divide this into. Okay, when you do that, you have to also underline the topic sentence in each paragraph. All right, so let's give you 5 minutes to do this, and then I'll come and explain. Okay. All right, so the first sentence says Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, made many contributions to the science of psychology. One of his greatest contributions was the history of theory of personality. According to Freud, human personality is made up of three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is the part of the okay. So, what did we learn from what I've read so far? Okay, so from here to here, it tells us two things. It tells us that Sigmund Freud, he's he's a great psychoanalyst. Okay, why? Because he made such a big contribution to the science of psychology. So he made some sort of discovery. So he's a scientist, right? He made some discovery. So what did he discover? Well, what he discovered is what we call theory of personality. So that is his discovery. Okay. So what exactly is theory of personality? Well, so far what we know that it says that our personality is made up of three parts: the id, the ego, and superego. Okay, so what we have seen so far is the background information and the main claim, right? Okay, so we should begin the the next paragraph right at the end of this sentence. So I'm going to put this symbol here, means starting a new paragraph. Okay, and the thesis statement is going to be the last sentence. Okay, the sentence I have just read. Okay, according to Freud, human personality is made up of three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. That's your thesis. Okay, so everything that precedes the thesis just provide you with some background information. Right. So the following paragraph, we have to explain all these three parts, starting with the id, the ego, and the superego. This paragraph is going to tell us about the id. So he said the id is the part of personality that exists only in the subconscious. Now, according to Freud, the id has no direct contact with reality. It is the innermost core of our personality and operates according to the pleasure principle. That is, it seeks immediate gratification for its desire, regardless of external reality or consequences. It is not even aware that external realities or consequences exist. All right, so all these sentences are about one thing. It's about the it. So it basically tells us that it is like a generator of desires. It's create desire. Okay. So the reason why we want to do this and do that, right? We want to go to we want to watch some TV show. We want to, buy some new shoes, new outfit. It's because of this. It creates desire. Okay, and it's not going to care about the the your current financial status, right? It's not going to care about all those laws in our society. It's not going to care about anything. Okay, it's just going to create desire, right? So if you only have this desire generator without anything to like filter or to suppress, then it is very dangerous because you could go around stealing stuff, committing crimes. Okay, because it's going to keep on generating desire. It doesn't care whether the desire is wrong or right to achieve. Okay, right. So now we understand what it means. The next paragraph is going to talk about the second part of our personality, which is the ego. And it says here that the ego developed from the id and is the subconscious desire of the id as best. Hang on, it says okay, I skip one paragraph. The ego developed from the id and is the part of personality contact with the real world. The ego is conscious and therefore aims to satisfy the subconscious desire of the id as best it can with the individual environment. All right, so the ego, right, it developed from the id. So it says that the ego is understand the context of the environment that you are in. Okay, so it's going to understand some of the it's going to understand the actions and the consequences, right? It doesn't care about action and consequences, right? It doesn't care if a certain thing that you do to satisfy the desire that it creates will lead you to trouble or not. It doesn't care about that, right? But the ego, it does. Okay, it does because it understands the environment that you're in. All right, let's carry on. When it cannot satisfy those desires, it tries to control or suppress it. The ego functions according to the reality principle. Okay, so the ego will understand the consequence of a particular action. All right, and if it realizes that, okay, this action, okay, is not going to, give you a happy ending, then it will try to suppress it from generating any more desire. All right. So that sentence marks the end of the third paragraph. So starting the next paragraph, superego, that is going to address the last part of the personality. Superego is the third and final part of personality to develop. This part of the personality contains our moral values and ideals, our notion of what's right and what's wrong. The superego gives us the rules that help the ego to control the id. For example, a child wants a toy that belongs to another child. That's the id, right? Okay, that's like desire. He checks the environment to see if it's possible to take that toy. So the ego is just trying to satisfy that desire. Okay, he can and does, and then he remember that it is wrong to take something that belongs to someone else. That's when his super ego kick in. Okay, and then returns the toy. All right, so basically, super ego acts pretty much like a mediator, right, between the it and the ego, right? So it's not a mediator. It's more like what you call. It's more like your the government or the parents, so to speak. Okay, think about this. So it is like it's like a child, right? A child is going to have mad desires. They're going to want whatever. Okay, going to create desire, doesn't care whether that is good or bad. Okay, and ego is going to be like a servant. Its job is to serve the id. Okay, so it's going to be responsible for all the planning, all right, how to make that happen, how to achieve the goal set forward by the id. But the super ego is going to be like a manager, okay, or someone who get to approve whether that is going to be a good thing to do or not. If the superego doesn't approve of that, right? If the superego realize that, okay, if you do this, you're going to end up in prison or you're going to get some punishment, then it will tell the ego to suppress the desire. Okay, so basically that's how our personality work, and it is also how we should divide our paragraph, okay, into manageable sections. All right, so far I believe, or I hope that you guys see how body paragraph works, okay, to um, break down a big piece of information in manageable portions, okay? So I would like to finish our class with this exercise, okay? And next time we will continue to do more of our paragraph organization, okay? So we're going to be looking at, different scenario and try to develop a paragraph using deductive and inductive style. Okay, so before we go, okay, let's just give you a quick summary of what we have studied so far, okay? So this chapter focus mainly on body paragraph, okay? So body paragraph is the part that you use to justify your main idea, which is the claim, okay? And to justify your main idea or your claim, okay, you will need a lot of information, okay? Okay, and even though you can write everything in one paragraph, it is not going to be easy for